I'm Pastor Cameron Martin, and this is The Pursuit. Just a reminder to visit us at jointhepursuit.net because that's where you'll find all of our content uncensored, as well as links to our YouTube channel and our podcast and socials. Today I'd like to start with a question for all of us. I'm only slightly concerned that this may come across as a little too bold. So let me just start by saying that this is for me as much as anybody, and I don't want to apologize for it simply because I do believe it's what God is saying. So that doesn't feel like it's available to me to apologize for because it is from Him. But it's for me, it's for you, it's for all of us, and it's for our good. So today I'd like to start with a question. Did we go through the death and resurrection of Christ to be born again and then simply live a nice, quiet life? Perhaps a better question might be, do we believe Jesus died for us so that we could feel better, binge Netflix, and post cool photos of our craft beer on social media? Exactly what was the lifestyle Jesus was addressing in the Laodiceans when he said in Revelation 3:15, I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. You know, we applaud those who go to extremes in romance, for their kids, for their own physical fitness, or in protesting injustice, as long as we agree with their definition. We celebrate when we see those who give up everything to follow their dreams, and those who compete athletically at the highest levels. We cheer them and we admire them. And yet, we say extremist like it's a bad thing, because current definitions denote it as derogatory. If you look in Merriam-Webster's dictionary for the current definition of extremist, it says noun, derogatory. Person who holds extreme or fanatical political or religious views, especially one who resorts to or advocates extreme action. Now, if we look at the word extreme, which would seem to be appropriate if we're thinking that somebody might be called extreme or make a practice of it and be called extremist, the definition for extreme says reaching a high or the highest degree, very great, of a person or their opinions, advocating severe or drastic measures. Far from moderate, it says. So if you aspire to an extreme, you are aiming high and it's very great, unless it's for religious or political reasons, which under the purest of situations would seem to indicate going to the extreme for the benefit of others. In his letter from Birmingham jail, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called Jesus an extremist and said, the question isn't whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists will we be? Will we be extremists for hate or for love? Jesus was extreme, and he called us to follow him. Is anyone extreme in their devotion to Jesus by the Lord's standards? What exactly is the Lord's definition of extreme? We're going to take a closer look at this idea in our next few messages. Jesus called us to the extreme, but not extreme in the sense that we would ever leave the character of Christ or commit willful sin and then claim we did it out of our love for him. The greatest commandments, in Jesus' own words, are to love God and to love our neighbors. So we wouldn't set those aside. We would fulfill them in extreme ways according to the extreme directives that he's given us, as well as his extreme example. Jesus was beaten without complaint. He was executed because the leaders of the church he was raised in lobbied for it. And when the governmental authorities carried out the execution, while his Jewish brethren stood by and mocked him, Jesus prays for them all to be forgiven. Extremist? Without question. Jesus loved the least, the worst, enemies, outcasts, and betrayers. So all extreme labels, nothing in the middle there at all. And he has invited us into a lifestyle of following him and not following a center, wide road, beaten path. So another example maybe, how do we see not only Jesus do it, but somebody follow Jesus and do something extreme, or something that we would have trouble saying, oh no, that person was trying to fit into the norm. They were trying to be sensitive to how people around them would view their acts, and how would authorities around them view their actions. So to do that, let's take a look at Apostle Paul. Was he, or were his deeds hot or cold? In his devotion to Christ, was he hot or cold? And in his desire to reach the nations with the gospel, was he hot or cold? Was he lukewarm? Was he moderate in any of those? Well, let's just look at his own words. In Acts, it's Acts 22, 3 and 4. This is Paul speaking, and he says, I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women and throwing them into prison. Then he says more about himself in 2 Corinthians 11, 23 through 27. And he says, are they servants of Christ? I am more. All right, so already setting the stage. Is there a norm or a perceived target for acceptable in our current society? That's what he's saying there. Well, if there is, then I am more, however you label that. I would say there's no way to not label that as out of boundaries, and by definition then extreme when looking at the normal. So again, he says in 2 Corinthians, are they servants of Christ? I am more. I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, and been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled and often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst, and I have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Every one of those extremes. Also, this doesn't even take into account the times Paul was left for dead. What is more extreme than that? Going through those 4 exactly. Devotion to Christ and a passion within himself to follow the call that was given to him, which is to spread the gospel. I can't imagine anyone reading about Paul and not labeling him as extreme. We would likely label someone extremist just for one of those entries on Paul's list. So who among us would label themselves extremist? Luke 21:17. Here's just a quick list of things that Jesus said that we would all probably ascribe to, and yet we somehow think that there must be a way to do it and not be outside of the norm, or to still be assimilated into culture. I'm not saying we shouldn't be winsome. I'm not saying we should seek to have people to be outcasts. we have to somehow find a way in. But our in is not by going in disguise and looking like everybody else. Our in is to say, look, there's a better way. We can do better. Is everybody here in our culture right now so happy that they wouldn't say, you know what, maybe I need something a little off the beaten path, or if I want a real change, way off the beaten path? So here are things that Jesus said, each one of these. Luke 21:17, everyone will hate you because of me. That's extreme. Luke 14:26, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. That's extreme. John 14:12, truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these. That's extreme, particularly because he's talking about miraculous deeds when he says deeds. And lastly, Luke 6:27, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. That's extreme. And that's the normal Christian life. So when do we embody that? When do we begin to follow Jesus in such a way that he would say, you are not lukewarm, you are hot? Because when he says, I'd rather you were hot or cold, he's telling us to pick a side. He's not saying, I'd actually like you to be cold. He's saying, come be passionate and follow passionately, because that's the only way we get there. We don't get there by being half committed or being occasionally committed or committed only on the weekends or when it's convenient. And I am as guilty as anybody of setting it aside or rescheduling it or postponing it or not wanting people to hate me. And so maybe not doing it like Jesus would or like Jesus did or in any way that Paul wouldn't roll his eyes at me. So when do we find our way toward what not we would call or view in our culture as the normal Christian life, but what not others, but what we see written in Scripture about what apparently was and should be still the normal Christian life? It reminds me of a favorite quote of mine. Tony Campolo said, who are you going to be in this life, and exactly when are you going to start being that? According to Jesus, our deeds should be viewed as hot with passion for him. And for all those he's called us to. We should be extreme in love, in grace, in generosity, in forgiveness, and in our devotion to Jesus as we follow him into the miraculous life he has called us to. Because if we are never labeled extreme, I don't know who we're following. If we blend in so well that the term extreme never crosses anyone's mind when they see our lives, we need to rise above the norm. Again, back to Dr. King's quote from earlier. That sentence I read earlier was followed by this: Jesus was an extremist for love, truth, and goodness, and thereby rose above his environment. That is contending for more, and that is worthy of our pursuit. Let's do it together at jointhepursuit.net. That's, again, where you'll find all of our content uncensored, as well as links to our YouTube channel, podcast, and socials. I hope to see you there.